title card. Whoa, that shot from Phantom Pain, the trailer, Orphanage. Oh my god, is this a backstory? Ah, snow again, huh? Watari, oh my goodness, there he is. Bells. The beginning, the mark of the beginning or the end. Whoa. Can't quite make that out. Kind of like a memory. I mean, it is a memory, but a lot.
どうしました、龍崎。ん？どうしたんだ。
Oh. Oh.
この殺人ノート、ページの端がちょっと切れてるんですが、この切れた部分に名前を書いても死にますか？
さあ、
Of course, she's not gonna say anything,
私はそんな使い方
right?
はしたことがないからわからない。
八神君、
Yagami-kun.
せっかく自由の身になったのにほとんどここから出ない。ミサさんが訪ねてきても数分の立ち話。外で文字通り自由恋愛してもいいんですよ。
まだキラ事件は解決を見ていない。
This should be interesting
でも
because
恋愛なんて気分にはなれない。
not in the mood for love.
それとも僕がずっとここにいたら迷惑だとでも言うのか。
いえ、
Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? Because he. Whoa.
今、僕は犯罪者を裁ける状況にない。ミサ、君が裁いてくれ。
Yeah, there it is. The goddess of death, huh? There it is. He put a target on her back. He's putting it into motion, isn't he? Whoa. Whoa. Wow. The Kira killings have begun again. Just as Misa got out, it is going down that route.
じゃあまた他のキラが現れたってことに。
I mean, surely. I mean, I was gonna notice it started up again once Misa.
ここでキラ、どうなってる？
なんてことだ。ミサしかいな
Yeah.
い。
I mean, she knows.
アマネが自由になった途端ですね。死神はわからないと言ったが、もし
Blue hair, there it
ノート
is.
の切れた方に名前を書いても殺せるなら不可能ではない。
It's not. But
しかしこのノートに一度名前を書き込んだ者は13日以内に次の名前を書き込まないと死ぬ。13日、これだけが。
it's a stumbling block. But just test it out, man.
人が死ぬの分かっていて何人もの名前書いたってことですよ。ノートの存在を公にすべきでないのなら抹殺するべきだ。
Oh man.
殺
Yeah.
とは穏やかじゃないが、上の方はそれに近い措置を取るだろうな。
ノートによる殺人を認めれば極刑、少なくとも終身刑。
何を考えている。矢が未来と。
Yeah, he needed her hair
ミ
for
サが
this as
捕まれ
well,
ばお
right?
前の身だって。
She clocked it.
そういうことか。なんてやつだ。矢が未来とは私がミサの命を助けると確信してるんだ。この状況でミサを助けるのは
Force her into action.
龍崎の本名
He's
を
doing it.
私が私のノートに書くしかない。そして私が龍崎を殺せば 確実にミサの寿命に関わったことになり、私も
She's not gonna hesitate though.
八神ライトの都合のいいように全て出来上がっている。
Why not just kill Light as well? Especially at this point, now that she's realized
どう
it.
するレン。死神のくせにお前がミサに入れ込んでること
Kill both Light and L in that case, right? If you really want to protect Misa. Whoa. What? Just chilling out there? That's a beautiful shot though.
鐘の音が。ええ、鐘の音が今日すごくうるさいんですよね。
何も聞こえない。
そうですか。今日はもうひっきりなしで気になって仕方がないんですよ。教会ですかね。結婚式。それとも。
何を言ってるんだ、
Perhaps.
くだらないこと言ってないで戻るぞ。
生まれてから一度でも本当のことを言ったことがあるんですか。
Oh, with sound cut out.
何を言ってるんだ、リュウ
He
さん。
seems
確かに僕もたまには嘘をつく。しかし真実のみを口にして一生を終える人間もまたいないんじゃないか。
oh.
人間はそんなに完璧に出来上がってもいない。誰しも嘘はつく。故意に人を傷つける嘘だけは言わないよう心がけてきた。
そう言うと思ってました。
Oh man, the sounds of the bells have been getting louder.
何をする、龍崎。
お手伝いをしようかと熱心に吹いていらっしゃるので。
いいよ、そんなことはしなくても。
マッサージもつけますよ。せめてもの罪滅ぼしです。私結構うまいですよ。
好きにしろよ。まだ濡れてる。
すみません。
Oh man, how about that for religious symbolism? Yeah, it's a really specific tone about this episode, right from the beginning.
寂しいですね。
え？
もうすぐお別れです。はい。
あ、龍崎、どういうことです？ノートを死刑に使う承認を某国から得たって。
Oh, he's testing it. He's doing it,
よく
but
やってくれました。
I think that's the reason he.
早速ですが、ノートを運ぶ手はずを整えてください。ノートを実際に試してみるということです。
Yeah.
無理だ。
ノートに名前を書き込むのは、そこから13日以内に死刑と決まっているものとし、
Similar to Lindell Taylor.
13日経って生きていれば死刑を免除させるという司法取引をします。
Here's the problem, though, and I think Elle knew as well.
もう少しなんです。
なんだ、停電。
あたり。
Data deletion.
あたりには自分の身にもしものことがあ
Oh,
った
that was the scene in the
全
beginning.
データが残らないようにしておけと言ってあります。
Or he could have told him anytime, but
まさか。
そういえば姿がどこにもいない。どういうことだ。
he?
皆さん、死神。
There's the bells. Go on. You know you can't resist it. Second time they showed that shot. Yeah. You were right, El. And he knew it. At the end, he knew he was right. All along. He seems at peace, though. Look at that. Look at that. Is that even a smile? Oh, man. He needs to get that book, right? Before they can get to it. Wow. Episode 25. Yeah, there it is. Now he has a copy they don't know about.
必ず龍崎の敵は討つ。この事件を解決することが花向けなんだ。渡りや他の犠牲者。松田さん、殺されるのが怖ければ抜けてください。
That's bold.
ここは命を懸けた人の集まりのはずです。
いや、そうだけど、龍崎みたいな言い方やめてくださいよ、ライト君。
Wow, I'm just floored right now. This is...
邪魔者は全て消えた。
For now.
僕は新世界の神だ。
Wow. Yeah. You know, it became clear. It was starting to become clear throughout that episode that, yeah, this is probably it for L. I mean, you know, after episode 24, I did not think at all that... I mean, I'll get into it in the discussion, but... Yeah. Wow. This is... staggering, really. Episode 25 out of 37, right? Bold. Yeah, I'm quite deflated. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that much is clear. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Right then, so it's happened. It happened. L is gone. The death of L at episode 25 out of 37. I mean, now before I actually get into it, that in itself is a bold choice. It's certainly a bold choice, right? To kill off one of the most interesting and most intriguing characters of the show, right? In my opinion, the most interesting and intriguing of the show. I know for some it might be like Yagami, but for me, it was a clear cut, you know, L was the most interesting of the show, of the story. I mean, of course, you know, let's not, you know, don't get me wrong. Light Yagami is certainly a fascinating character, but for me, you know, it was L, right? That was essentially my favorite character as well of the series, of the story. So yeah, you know, as you saw, it certainly hurt to see him, you know, sign off. Yeah, man. So, you know, let's focus on this aspect of it, you know, killing off such a major character, essentially the opposing force to Light Yagami, the only individual that is able to be on that level, right? And actually beyond that level in a lot of cases as well, right? And, you know, killing that character off, that is such a bold choice, right? I mean, you know, it's... Let's say I'm cautiously optimistic because, you know, part of me is, you know, immediately thinking, how exactly do you top L, right? How do you replace that hole that this character's left now in this series, in the story, right? That opposing force. I mean, there's the opposing force in the task force, right? But again, you needed someone like L, right? These two are essentially equals. They're on the same level, right? More or less. You needed someone like that to counter like Yagami, right? So taking him out of the equation, right? And not just him, Watari as well. And in that sense, it was so sad to see Watari go, because he's just this sweet old man who looks out for L. I mean, he's quite capable. He's certainly sweet, but he's quite capable himself. That's for sure. You see that he's actually running a lot of the operation, right? He's actually the one putting a lot of things into motion upon L's requests. And you see that, much like Bruce Wayne or Batman or Alfred, he's got his own, station. And he overlooks a lot of things. So it was sad to see him go because he's essentially assisting L. Now, I'm not saying he's his sidekick, even though it has been that, Bruce Wayne and Alfred dynamic so far. But you see in that quick flashback, a quick, glimpse into L's past and Watari's past, or their relationship, essentially, or the beginnings of it, essentially, right? You see that he brings him to some sort of house, right? Now, I didn't quite catch it. I wasn't really able to read it. Like, I could see it, but I wasn't able to make it out. So, of course, Watari's had quite a bit of impact on L's life. And, there's a quick moment as you see L really... you see the concern, right? As Watari is essentially dying, and he's trying to reach for the delete data kill switch. As the screen cuts off, you see that look on L's face, right? That concern. You don't see that. You don't see that often, right? In that sense, you see a lot of things in this episode that you just don't associate with L, or you don't see him go through, right? And you see that even L himself is a bit out of sorts and confused about how to deal with these emotions, right? That one moment that he shows up this is in the beginning, he shows up in Watari's station, right, in that room, and he's just silent. He's just quiet, right? Now, at first I thought maybe, that's him going to Watari and, just letting him know, just letting it all out. Just hear me out, Watari. It's highly likely that I'm going to die and that you're probably going to be targeted as well. And, he probably laid out all of those things, right? And perhaps he asked him to put some kind of contingency plan into motion, and he told him to delete everything. But, that could have been done before that moment as well, right? I think another angle to that moment is that he is so lost in his current state of emotions and how to deal with them, or not being able to deal with them, that he goes to Watari, right? The one person that has been his constant. He goes to him, but yet he's not able to open up, right? Or verbalize his feelings at the moment, because he doesn't even seem to understand his feelings at the moment, because this is new. This is so new for L to be in this position, clearly, right? And you see a really different side of L throughout this episode. You see that he couldn't quite express himself to Watari, even if he wanted to, and even if he's turning to Watari for some guidance or some semblance of reassurance or something, but it felt like he just couldn't quite express himself. I mean, that's one angle to that scene, I think, but also, like I mentioned earlier, it could be him also going to Watari. It could be a mix of both, essentially, right? He might have opened up about his feelings on how things are at the moment, right? The current state of affairs, and as it stands, it's inevitable. Their death is inevitable, right? And he might have been opening up to Watari about that, and all the things that might go into motion, right? And all the things that need to go into motion because of this really highly likely possibility, right? Now, yes, L died, incredibly sad. And, throughout that episode, it became quite clear that, yes, he is, this is the end. And he himself had essentially accepted it, right? You see right from really early on in the episode, you see that there's a certain reluctance about his actions and his demeanor, right? That he has accepted, that, there's nothing else he can really do, even though he is so sure that Light is Kira, right? He pretty much has Light locked on as Kira, right? Yet there's so many things that are still against him in terms of proving it, having that evidence. He knows, right? He knows for sure that Light is Kira, but the problem is trying to convince others, right? And having that evidence to do so. Yet, unfortunately, this started in episode 24, didn't it? Everything's just stacked against him at this point. He had to reluctantly uncuff him and let Misa go, even though he knew he's letting Kira 1 and 2, free at that moment. But he had to do it, right? He had to do it. And then you have the task force, who's also convinced, absolutely convinced that, Chief Yagami, Sochiro Yagami's son, is in the clear, right? In that sense, you can maybe even say that right from the beginning, perhaps they might have been blinded by some of that bias, knowing that this is Chief Yagami's son, and they know him as this really, top-level student, this impressive young man, and they just couldn't associate him with mass murder. So in that sense, that was another thing L was really up against, because this task force knows like Yagami. They know Chief Yagami's son, right? They know the type of person he is, or the type of person he's presented himself as all these years, right? So that was yet another roadblock, or road bump, or some stumbling block for L. But there's so many things to be discussed here. Let's see. Before I go any further, let's the episode on its own. It's an incredible episode. I think episode 24 was one of the best of the show, right? Of the story of the series. I think this might be the clear cut best of the series. It really had that special feeling about it, didn't it? And rightfully so. It had that really important feeling about it. And I say rightfully so because it is the death of Al, right? Of a major character, right? Stylistically, it was really different from the rest of the series of many of the episodes. And again, that makes complete sense given the magnitude of the things that play out in this episode, right? So yeah, rightfully so. This episode was quite phenomenal. And even though my favorite of the series just died, I'd say this is the best of the series, right? I think it is the best episode of Death Note. And could this be topped? I don't know, man. Again, earlier in my discussion in the opening, I brought up the concept of this being a bold choice, right? I don't think you can actually match or top L, right? Because he's such a unique character, and such a unique individual, a presence. That's one of the reasons I find him so interesting, and that is one of the reasons he is my favorite of Death Note, of the story. You're not going to replace that character, right? You're not gonna just have someone. You're not just going to introduce a new character that is just going to plug right in and fill in that hole. No, you can't. That's impossible. So, I mentioned that I am cautiously optimistic because if they are, able to kill L off this early, I mean, it's 25 episodes in, so it's not really early, but it's still, there's still quite a bit left. So if the writer felt that he could kill L off here, I'm going to assume that he has something adequate planned out for this final phase, right? Post L phase. So for that reason, part of me is kind of excited to see how this could play out now, right? There's two things that could happen here. It could stay on that trajectory and through the introduction of a new character or a handful of new characters, even, who knows, it could it could play out towards a grand finale, a great conclusion, or it might have peaked. It is possible that it might have peaked and you might not be able to have any new characters really, fill in that hole at this point in time, because a lot of this build up, these 25 episodes, it was all about L against Light and all of the things that come along with these two titans, essentially. So yeah, even though it is incredibly sad to see L go, part of me is still excited to see how they manage to move on from this point. But again, there is that possibility that, yeah, it might have peaked. All depends, right? I need to see the next few episodes and see how it plays out. But yeah, it's certainly a tough act to follow. Let's not, beat around the bush. L, that's certainly a really tough act to follow. Now, that being said, I don't think it'll be just one individual that comes in and just replaces L as the new opposing force, because there is going to be more opposing force. It goes back to my episode 1 discussion. He can't be left unchecked, right? He might be left unchecked for a bit because right now there's only the task force, right? That's the only opposing force at the moment. But, they're not really even the opposing force because they don't even know that Kira is right under their noses. So in that sense, there's no opposing force at the moment. He is in complete control, right? Inside and outside, right? And by that I mean that outside he has Misa, essentially, right? She's got the Shinigami eyes, she's got the Death Note, and inside he's got a secret copy of the Death Note now. And no one has any suspicions about him. He's entirely cleared. So is Misa. So yeah, at this point in time, there's no opposing force. There's no pushback. So yeah, but that being said, sooner or later, the universe demands it. There is going to be an opposing force, right? And I don't think it'll just be as simple as, oh, look, here's someone else that can kind of come in and be, now this is going to be the new conflict, right? The one-on-one, Light against some new person. I think it'll be more of a collective effort. But, that could be a cool angle that, as a collective effort, perhaps the task force, or maybe even a couple members of the task force, and, some others. They've established that L has associates, right? Maybe it could take a collective effort to go after Light Yagami at some point, because at this point he's in complete control and there's no target on his back. But again, there's still 12 episodes left, so things are going to move. It might take a few episodes, but the new threat to Kira and Light Yagami is going to show itself, right? Be it in a collective effort of a group, or a few new people, or maybe it is just one new person that comes into the scene. But at the end of the day, there is going to be a new opposing force. There has to be. And on that topic, there is no chance in hell that there's no contingency plans in place. L is just too careful. He's just too smart, right? He's too clever to not have that plan in place, right? The thing is, he's considered the possibility of himself dying many times, right? And the way he spoke, it felt like, and I'm speaking of, episodes long ago, he would talk to like Chief Yagami and say, oh, if I was to die, assume that your son is Kira, right? This is before he goes to the school and puts that plan into motion, right? He kind of addresses the situation head on, and he knows Light Yagami can't do anything at this point. But the thing is, he's not a suspect anymore, right? So he didn't have that anymore. L just didn't have that angle anymore, because at this point Light has completely cleared himself as Kira in the eyes of the task force, right? So he didn't have that angle anymore, that if L goes missing, if L dies, the prime suspect is Kira, or it's confirmed that Light is Kira. That's not the case anymore. But you see throughout these episodes that he has considered the possibility that, yeah, he could die. There's a possibility he could die. So, I'm sure, he's taken that into account, and he's put in plans or contingencies, essentially. And, I feel like, just like he told Watari, if something was to happen to you, delete all that information, get rid of it. clearly they must have had other discussions, or he himself had other contingencies in place, right? So I firmly believe that Light Yagami, or Kira, is still going to have to deal with the aftermath, or the influence of L, even beyond his death, because there's no chance in hell that he didn't have any backup plans, or plan C, D. He certainly considered that possibility that him dying is possible as well, right? So he has to plan for that, just in case. Now I'm going to go into some Game of Thrones Season 1 spoilers. So, giving you a heads up. For this next segment, I don't know, a minute, it might be a minute long, who knows? Just for this next segment, I'm going to go into spoilers for Season 1. And it also kind of plays into Season 2. Now, Ned Stark, right? He found out that essentially Joffrey is, the result of incest, right? That he is not the true king, and that he shouldn't be next in line after Robert's passing, right? He's illegitimate, right? He's a bastard. Now, unfortunately, again, one more time, spoilers. Unfortunately, Ned Stark does end up dying because, putting his cards on the table led to his death, essentially. He wrote a letter to Stannis Baratheon, right, explaining all of it, explaining that, he strongly suspects that, Joffrey Baratheon is actually the product of incest, and he is not the rightful king next in line, and that it should be Stannis. I mean, Stannis or Renly, but he wrote the letter to Stannis, and he explained all of this, and Stannis knew the truth. So someone out there knew about this, someone quite important in Stannis Baratheon. And of course, from that point, the rumors kind of spread, and he established that became his fundamental truth of the matter, right? Because he knew this is Ned Stark. Ned Stark has no reason to come up with this type of diabolical, plan or, scheme. Ned Stark, that's the whole thing about Ned Stark, right? He's one of the most honorable in the Seven Kingdoms, right? Everyone knew this. So the fact that he got this letter explaining it all, detailing all of this, the farce that is this fake king next in line who's illegitimate, Stannis Baratheon knew all about this, right? So, my line of thought here is that is something similar possible here as well. That just in case L might have had someone in mind, or a group of people in mind, right? He has associates. They established that he's got associates in all kinds of places. Is it possible that he kind of had this in mind, and he had some kind of plan B, C, or D, something prepared just for this kind of thing, right? Again, I think there's quite a strong parallel here. Him potentially outlining the fraud that is Light Yagami, right? I think that could be a really cool scenario. So could there be something like that as well, right? So see, that's one of the things that does have me excited to see how L might have dealt with the potential of his death in all of this, and unfortunately it happened. So now, and it wasn't just him, Watari had to go as well. So now I might get to see some really exciting and interesting plans put into motion because of this. And the reason I'm kind of, batting for that angle right now is because, listen, man, no one is, I just don't think anyone or a group of people even could come in and have a complete case from the ground up. They have to start from square one, right? And somehow link it to Light Yagami once again. And actually, there's still a matter of L's death. How is that going to be handled? Are they going to tell anyone, or is that just going to be kept under wraps, right? If you look at it from the task force, right, from their angle, I could totally see them now wanting this to get out, right? Because then, you incite some panic, and you incite some really bad situations, essentially, or potentially. If it gets out that, oh, look, L, the greatest detective in the world, was killed, and it was Kara who did it. You don't really want that to get out, do you? Or it was Kara who caused it, right? But yeah, you don't want that to get out. And if I'm looking at it from the task force's perspective, no, you want that to stay in. And this is going to go into another segment that took me back to a few episodes ago, right? Those episodes, those earlier episodes, or throughout the Yotsuba Corporation arc, there's a lot of really important setup and a lot of foreshadowing that really comes into play now. And that whole concept of the successor to L, right? There was that moment a few episodes ago. It might have been episode 21 or 20. It's around the time Namikawa, or it's around the time Light decides to make a call as L to Namikawa, right, during that Yotsuba Corporation meeting, right? And because of that, you see that L kind of right, and he even thought, oh, at this rate, if I was to die, you could just kind of slot in as L, right? You could take over as the title of L. There is this concept, there could be a successor to L. There could be others in line. I remember bringing that what if situation up in that discussion for that episode, be it 21 or 20. So yeah, there's still that angle, right? Actually, let me go back to my other thought and finish that. Essentially, I don't think I could see anyone building a case from the ground up, from square one against Light Yagami. That's just not going to happen. It took someone like L to even come up with that profile, and he was pretty spot on, and he was able to pinpoint Light Yagami. And he knew it was Light Yagami for a long time at this point. So yeah, in that sense, I can't see any new character coming in and starting from ground up, from square one, and somehow, linking it to Light Yagami, right? So, and that's the reason I'm kind of leaning towards him having backup plans and contingencies, and him having some kind of Ned Stark-esque letter or dossier or something prepared, just in case. Essentially his case against Light Yagami. So if someone else, say an associate or a few associates of L, get that information, right? If he has some kind of plan in place to get this information to them, if he was to die, then you could see a new opposing force taking place and coming in for these last few episodes. Not last few episodes, for this last phase, essentially. So yeah, that's my train of thought on that angle. Now, I said they might not even know, right? They might keep his death under wraps and not really let that get out. But of course, if I'm on that, train of thought that he might have something prepared just in case, you would have to assume that it's also going to explain, if you're getting this, that means I've died or I've passed on. Something along those lines, right? You see that in a lot of stories and shows, movies, anything, right? In stories. Sometimes you'll see those types of letters, right? Dossiers or letters. Oh, if you're seeing this, it means I've passed on, right? So yeah, let's see. Let's see if something like that could be in play or it might come into play. Now, circling back to the successor to L and it being this position. Again, episode 21 or episode 20, I know it's one of those two, but yeah, in that, in front of the entire task force, he posed a question to Light Yagami: if I was to die, would you take up the position of L in my place, right? Would you replace me? And he posed a question in front of everyone. Now, of course, Light Yagami was clever enough to see through it, that it was a test, and there's actually something in there that might kind of that Light Yagami putting it out there, that situation out there, might actually end up being a bit of a not his downfall. I don't know if it could lead to his downfall, but it could play against him. The fact that he openly, now again, that Light Yagami did not have the Kara persona. His memories, they were gone. That was Light Yagami. So he was openly giving his take on that situation. Essentially, L knew that, Light Yagami had the powers of Kira and he made it so it was passed on, but he also had plans in place to have it come back to him, right? And that is the reason I was kind of, really iffy and really, not buying that scene in the chopper of him being able to write that name in that little tiny piece, because L is just distracted at that moment. I thought he should have been given all the things that L believes, right? And that he certainly believes that, the power of Kira can return to Light Yagami, or that he has things or he has plans to have it return to him at the right moment. I thought he'd be watching him like a hawk, right? I was expecting him to be just watching him at all times. But no, there's that moment he's distracted and he's watching Higuchi and Rem, and Light Yagami somehow, gets Higuchi's name on the tiny piece behind the book. Again, it was a bit far-fetched, that moment, but yeah, given how spot on L was about all of this and how much he believed that, yes, Light Yagami plans on bringing that power back to himself, I was so sure he would be just on him, right? Especially after knowing the effects of the Death Note. And, again, another thing to note here is that Higuchi died as Light Yagami had the Death Note in his possession. Now, yes, later they do look through it. Of course, you don't see any of the writing because he used the ripped piece. But then in this episode, you see that L does see that there was a piece ripped out of the Death Note. So, again, that also gives him yet another angle, yet another answer to a bit of a puzzling situation, right? He sees that there's a piece missing. But now let's circle back to that, situation from that episode. Essentially, Light told him, I'm gonna out you. I'm gonna tell the rest of the task force your line of thought on this. And this is the thing I earlier mentioned, that it could kind of go against him. Kind of depends. It kind of depends on the task force, right? Now, Light surmised that L's train of thought here is that, or his line of thinking is that once, Kira is going to return, once, Light successfully steals L's position, right? And to have the control of the police, right, and have that kind of influence, and be Kira in secrecy as well, that is the ultimate, right? That is the ultimate, and yeah, it was clear that L certainly believes that, Kira Light Yagami, before that persona passed on, for the time being, L certainly believed that Light Yagami is capable of that. And yeah, it appears that it might be heading into that direction. And, I just mentioned that it's probably not in their best interest to, put it out there that L has passed and that he's died at the hands of Kira. He kind of slots right in, doesn't he? Like Yagami, that is. And you see at the end there, you see he's, speaking of avenging Watari and L, and you see that kind of talk. You see that Chief Yagami is certainly liking that, that conviction. And you see Ayazawa is all about that as well. And you see that Matsuda, he even noted that, Light's almost immediately kind of, behaving like L or speaking like L, right? So yeah, it's almost like a seamless transition here. Light Yagami potentially just slotting right in as the new L. And, great setup moment episodes ago, 4 or 5 episodes ago at this point. It looks like it might be heading into that direction. Yeah, in that sense, it is impressive. It's quite impressive that he's essentially, put himself in such a perfect position at this moment in time, in complete control of the situation, inside and out, right? On the outside, like I mentioned, he's got Misa and the Shinigami eyes. He's in prime position to, just slot right in as the new L, potentially. And if that does happen, he's going to find all sorts of new influence and control at his fingertips, right? Power at his fingertips. Wow, that, yeah. And, also he acquired yet another copy of the Death Note that the rest of the task force does not know about, right? So he can maintain that angle, right? Oh, look, that copy is right there. That Death Note is right there. The one with the ripped piece. Yet he does have a copy now that they don't know about, a copy that he can use. But also, that copy of the Death Note, I'm not 100% sure just yet that he just gets to keep it. I mean, it looked like he just kind of pocketed it, and to me it felt like, yeah, that's his new copy. But the mid-episode card for one of the last few episodes did say that, if a Shinigami is to die, and of course all those mid-episode cards, hinting towards a potential death, yeah, it played out like that, didn't it? Rem is gone, and it was heading towards that, right? It became quite clear this is how he's going to target Rem, right? Force her into action, and he certainly forced her into action. Now, yeah, that mid-episode card said it goes to the next god of death, Shinigami. So yeah, I don't know, that mid-episode card, they did also specify that it is quite unlikely. It said something like that, though it is impossible to imagine if Shinigami was to die, it would go to the next, Shinigami. But, the impossible or the highly unlikely has happened and the Shinigami has passed on. Rem has passed on. Now, before I go any further, I mentioned it during the episode. If Rem has clocked at this point that Light Yagami is this despicable human being, that he'll do anything to target her, and that he is putting Misa in danger just for this reason, right? To get rid of me, why not just put his name down too, right? Yes, I get that angle that she believes that, and she understands that, of course, Light Yagami makes Misa really happy. That's her, reason essentially to live at this point. But you also have to see that she has now seen the true nature of Light Yagami, and even before this moment, she already didn't like Light Yagami, right? She was able to read him really early on, and she knew that this is a problem for Misa for sure. But she also saw that Misa is so attached to this human, and that this human does make her happy. This man, and if you go back to that Yotsuba washroom scene, she really established, yes, I'm so sure now. I'm so convinced now that yes, Light Yagami is the right person for you. I think she said something like that, or it is the true cause of your happiness, right? That you still love, that you still had this strong connection to him even after losing your memories. But now she's faced with his true nature, right? And she sees that he is putting Misa in danger just for this plan. I thought maybe if she's gonna do it, might as well just put both Light and L in there, right? But I guess she was still kind of looking at it from that angle that, yeah, Misa finds a lot of happiness being with this person, even though right now she's seen how disgusting he is and how low he can go. Yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, they set that up a long time ago in that jealous episode of him disappearing after, altering or, stepping in as Misa is meant to die. But, he stepped in, and because of that, he prolonged Misa's life. Or intended death, and he kind of disappeared and turned to this magical, fantastical dust, sand essentially. But they set that up a long time ago, right? And it finally happened. It played out. So they've been dropping hints and a lot of foreshadowing for a long time now. Leading towards this final moment for Rem. She did it. She did it, right? And I had no doubt in my mind that she would do it to protect Misa, and it was so clear right from the beginning, that yeah, she's so protective of Misa, and she'll do anything to protect her. So this was so likely to happen, and Light Yagami was so sure of that happening as well, right? If that does play out, and Light Yagami does end up taking over as L, or slots into that position or pretends to be L from this point on, I hope someone from the task force, right? Be it just one person, I'm hoping that at least one person notices this strange occurrence here, or that, the situation L brought up, or that scenario that was brought up a few episodes ago, that, Kira is going to return once he steals L's position, and that being in that position could be so substantial, right? Being in control of the police, right? Having that kind of influence and control, and being Kira at the same time, that's the ultimate. It could play out like that. So if Light Yagami does get into that position, I hope someone from the task force finds it strange that it has played out just like that, right? Just as L kind of thought. And Light Yagami himself had pointed out and laid out openly in front of the task force. But on the flip side of that, you might have the task force themselves, right? Chief Yagami and the others, asking Light to slot in and take over that position because they don't want it to get out that that L has passed on and that he's died. So there's a flip side to that as well. But yeah, my hope is that at some point, even though it hasn't appeared that any of the task force members suspect like Yagami, again, given the fact that, you know, their chief Yagami's son is this individual that L was kind of suspecting this whole time, and they were just not able to, you know, link him to all this mass murder. But, you know, my hope is that at least someone from the task force does kind of break that barrier and does kind of become suspicious of him. But, you know, going back to the episode as a whole, it's an incredible episode. It's a phenomenal episode. I believe it's the best of the series at this point. And yeah, you know, there is some haunting imagery in this, you know, the type of imagery that you associate with a story, a show, right? Some of the imagery in here, it's going to stay with me forever, right? In terms of Death Note, right? Anytime I think of Death Note and I talk about Death Note, I'm going to have those visuals in my mind, right? You know, those stunning moments on the roof as it's raining, it's storming, right? And L's out there, right? Contemplating his imminent death. You know, on the stairs, of course, you know, Light and L. I'll get into that in a bit. You know, Misa's song, there's some stunning imagery there, right? The halls, right? They show Light going in the hall before the storm, going to the roof, and then at the end, as it's storming outside, you know, it's raining, it's coming down, and you see Light Yagami, you know, walking the other way once again, as it kind of goes to that final shot. You know, I'm the god of the new world. Again, really memorable imagery in this, beautiful imagery, right? It's a stunning episode, that's for sure. Going to the beginning of the episode, that was so crucial, right? It certainly set the tone, a distinct tone, that, you know, sense of dread right from the beginning of the episode. Again, that, you know, stylistically, it was so different from any episode. It was established really early on, you know, those bells, they played a significant part in this, and those bells really, yeah, those made me really uneasy, and that was, you know, one of the main reasons I kind of, just like L knew he's about to die, I accepted, oh my god, this is it, isn't it? There was a lot of things, you know, essentially this is full of death flags, right from the beginning. A lot of things, a lot of foreshadowing and hints kept, you know, leading up to that point. The moment that incredible, you know, thunderstrike happens, you know, and the power goes out, and of course, those shots of Rem, oh my god, first taking out Watari and, like, you know, kind of fading into the shadows. Yeah, that was, again, some really stunning imagery, right, at play. The red lighting because of the alarms, essentially, and Rem in the shadows. By the end of episode 24, you know, yes, even though it looked like, I mean, it didn't look like it was pretty clear that L is in a tricky situation now, really tricky situation now. At that point, I did not think that in the next episode L is going to die, right? I knew he's in a tricky situation, but I just kind of felt that, okay, you know, this is the next challenge. Let's see how this plays out, the next phase, the next arc. Let's see how L handles this, right? But yeah, I did. By the end of episode 24, I did not think that L is going to die in the next episode, right? Or even soon. Yeah, but, you know, in this episode, it became clear that yes, unfortunately, it's going to happen, right? And it kind of takes us through a journey in those 20 minutes or so, right? L's final journey, right? Contemplating his imminent death, and accepting his death, right? That was one of the things I noticed at the end there. He almost kind of seemed at peace, right? You notice that a lot of the other, you know, Kara killings or the heart attacks, they go out kicking and screaming in a state of panic. I mean, in pain, immense pain, clearly, right? But you see, L had accepted it. He was at peace, and he knew. At the end, he knew. At the end, he knew that he was right this whole time. That Light Yagami was Kira. And, you know, I knew that dude is not going to be able to, you know, hold back or resist rubbing it in. He had to, you know, smirk in his face and, you know, in his dying face, and let him know, ha, look, I got you. I'm Kira. And he has a history of doing this. He did the same thing with Naomi and Rei, right? So yeah, you know, he's done it again. He just wanted to, you know, he wanted to get that in. He wanted him to know, I was Kara all along, and you couldn't get me. Even then, I mentioned that his ego could play a part in his potential downfall, right? He's got this irresistible urge just to, you know, let them know, to rub it in. You know, he likes that feeling of getting one over his enemies, right, his opponents. So yeah, you know, I still feel like that could still be his undoing, or it could play a part in his undoing if you know, Light Yagami is to go down. You know, there's still a possibility that, yeah, the series could end with Light Yagami doing everything he wanted to do, right? But going back to the episode and, you know, reoccurring themes throughout the episode, the bells, the ringing of the bells, the tolling of the death knell, right, signaling the impending death of L. That was a major aspect of this episode. And, you know, he mentioned on that rooftop that, you know, these bells, they've been ringing all day, that they're so loud. Yeah, you know, again, death flags all over the place. But, you know, that moment at the end as his eyes finally start to close, you know, the death, or, you know, those bells, they fade off as well, right? Because, yeah, this is it. This is the end of L. And the bells are essentially, you know, in his mind, in his head. He saw all the signals. He knew, you know, his death is imminent at this point, that, you know, this, especially this next move he puts into motion, could lead to his death, right? It's going to force Light Yagami into action, or it led Rem into action. But again, you know, Light set that up, essentially, you know, the long master plan of his. But, you know, that opening, it's really quite an interesting opening, isn't it? You know, they put us in his headspace, because later, as he comes out of that memory, you see that it's in first person. You know, they really put us in his mindset, right? And see how Light is really, you know, feeling at the moment. And it's something quite unique to him, quite different to him. He's not used to this. And, you know, he's thinking back to childhood, his childhood, at that specific moment of Watari and him. And, you know, it appeared to be some kind of orphanage, right? A lot of kids, there's a lot of crying, a lot of unease about the situation. You know, it was interesting that at this moment in time, he's thinking back to that particular moment. Is it because, you know, that was the last time he felt this kind of thing, you know, the last time he felt this lost and uneasy about the situation, and just not knowing how things are going to play out, right? Going back to his childhood, maybe, but he is thinking of that moment. But again, you know, it also serves as a bit of a, you know, setup moment for a potential flashback story, right? And, you know, I mentioned that in the last episode, right? I would love to get a backstory on these two. So I thought it was great to finally kind of lift that curtain a bit, right? And shed some light on that past of theirs, right? Their relationship of theirs. And, you know, there was a really cool shot, and it's the exact same shot out of Phantom Pain. Essentially, it's the same type of setup. You know, there's that one kid, and the other kid is, you know, opposite to him, but looking in that direction. You know, is there any significance to those two children they showed? And also, you know, in that moment, you see Watari has him by the hand, and maybe, you know, in that sense, that's the reason he goes to Watari, right? And he's just kind of silent because he doesn't really quite know how to express himself. But, you know, maybe he felt that he can go to Watari again in this moment, right? For some comfort. So for some guidance, because back then as a child, you know, Watari took his hand, right? And he's been with L since then, right? So I do love that dynamic, and I really want to learn more about the Watari and L dynamic. But great opening scene, right? Really set the tone, and it really put us in his headspace. And I loved how they used that projector turning off sound effect, right? That this memory is kind of playing back in his mind. And then it kind of goes into that first person, you know, L looking at the computer monitor, and then him kind of looking up at the roof. But, you know, the rooftop moment, you know, in the rain, again, hauntingly beautiful moment. It's a sad moment, to see him like that, to see him so, you know, reluctant, and the fact that he's accepted his imminent death. You see it that, you know, he's accepted it at that point. And, you know, I loved how he posed that question to Light. And, you know, actually, it kind of even felt like he's not even addressing Light, that he's actually kind of looking beyond that facade and looking to Kira, you know, addressing Kira even, or the real Light Yagami, in that sense, you know, and this facade that he's put on, you know, perhaps his entire life, right, to fit in. It looked like L is kind of looking past that and asking him, have you once in your life ever, you know, told the truth? Something along those lines, right? And that goes to show you how much of an understanding he had of Light Yagami and his character, right? And that psychological profile he had early on. Yeah, man, he knew him. He understood Light Yagami, right? And in that sense, it's also, you know, letting him know that I know you're Kira, right? I've known all along. So, you know, let me ask you this question now. Now, you know, it still remains to be seen if Light ever actually. I don't think Light actually thought. I mean, he knows that, you know, L suspected him, but I don't think Light actually thought that for sure, you know, L is like locked on him, that he knows I'm Kira, but he just can't prove it, right? I don't think he knew that much, or he didn't feel that, right, from this situation, but he knew that L is on his tail, and if he doesn't take care of that situation, L is going to take him down. And if that plan to, you know, expose the 13-day rule was to go through, you know, it was going to be game over. And that's the reason Rem kind of, you know, stepped in, and she was forced to step in, forced her into action, right? Essentially, right before that, it was made pretty clear for Rem. You know, they're talking about how if they were to catch this Kira, how they could treat, you know, how it could play out for them. You know, you have Matsuda here saying that they should just kill them, and you have Al saying there's a really big, you know, high chance that they would get the death penalty, right? So yeah, that made it quite crystal clear for Rem as well, right? They didn't leave it ambiguous, right? They made it quite clear. Listen, Rem heard this, right? And now she knows Misa is in danger if this plan goes through, right? The 13-day, the lie, right? The cheat code, essentially, right? That Light Yagami put in. And then, of course, later on, there's that scene on the stairs. Now, you know, I'm sure that scene in itself, before I get into, you know, some of the symbolism of that scene, I'm sure, you know, them having that kind of interaction, that probably sparked some fan fiction. But on a serious note, it's clearly a reference to Jesus and his disciples, right? Judas specifically. And also, I think in that moment, you do see that L doesn't really consider himself to be above or greater than Light, right? That he does essentially consider them equals. Though I also think there was he's also kind of taken a bit of a final shot at Kira, right, as well. Let me atone for my sins. Yeah, you know, it's just full of a lot of cool symbolism and, you know, subtext, isn't it? And, you know, I loved the light shafts. You know, that's one of the things that's quite prominent in, you know, religious imagery, paintings. You know, light shafts coming above, or coming from above, you know, halos behind prominent figures, Jesus as well, essentially. But yeah, you know, it was clear in episode 1 of the series that the religious or biblical references and symbolism is going to play a part for sure, and it does quite a bit in this episode as well. Again, you know, the bells, that imagery, that moment, right? Him cleaning Light Yagami. And then lastly, and also, you know, speaking of disciples, Misa, and her song. Now, you know, that moment, you know, first of all, she looked quite lifeless, and this was the first time in a long time, I mean, maybe the first time actually, that she looked like a different person. Her demeanor was so different. Usually she's got this really goofy and bubbly and playful demeanor, right? But no, this was dead serious. She was all about this, right? She was really dialed in, you know, and on that path, you know, on that crusade, to punish them for Light Yagami. She almost kind of looked like a doll, right? One of her own dolls that she's got in her room. She seemed quite lifeless. Her eyes are really quite noticeable here. And you know, that opening shot, I really, really like that opening shot. Again, it felt like, you know, as she's changing, it felt like she's kind of basking in the light, right? You see that in the background, all that light's coming in, and she's framed in the shot in the middle of it. And like I mentioned, you know, light shafts and, you know, halos and light. Again, that is something you see in religious imagery as well. And yeah, I felt that she's kind of like basking in that, you know, the glory of light. You know, it's a great image for sure. And, you know, of course, light can be symbolic of so many things, right? Hope and wisdom, and, you know, the presence of God or godlike being, right? So, you know, I really love that setting and that moment, that setup, that frame. And, you know, notice how as they're showing that on screen, the voiceover is of Light Yagami saying, punish them for me, Misa, as if she's getting this command straight from a god himself. And once again, that takes me back to the first opening of the series. The first time they show me Misa, and at this time I didn't even know it was Misa, and even then it was clear that this individual is like lost, but then she was found, right? She saw the light, and even in that frame in the opening, as Light Yagami reaches out, you see the shaft of light on Light Yagami. So I thought it was great that they included that moment, the inclusion of that Misa's song moment as she carried out Light Yagami's commands, right? The god of the new world at this point, because all his enemies are defeated, right? For the time being. Like I said earlier, the universe demands it. There is going to be an opposing force. Now that Rem's out of the picture, Misa is going to be manipulated, and then some, right? He's not going to get rid of her. There's no reason to get rid of her, at least not for the time being, right? Because she has the Shinigami eyes. He can use her, That was the initial plan before Rem became a problem, right? Now he actually gets to use her. A small part of me kind of hopes for some kind of rebellious phase from Misa, right? But I know enough about Misa at this point to know that no, she's just going to get manipulated by light, and there's no Rem anymore. So yeah, she's going to be used up for sure. That being said, she straight up told Light that use me, use me on this crusade of yours. Yeah. But yeah, that's about it for that episode. It's an incredible episode, incredibly sad episode as well, for sure. I just lost my favorite character of the show, of the story, and the story lost an important character, a prominent character that was crucial to the story. So that signals a new beginning for the rest of the story and the trajectory of the story. Again, it's bold. There's no guarantee if it's going to, be on that upwards trajectory, or it might have peaked, or if it might head down, right? It might be on the downturn. Yeah, it remains to be seen, but, I am cautiously optimistic because I do, now that L is out, I do want to see this next phase of an opposing force. How about the logistics of, the HQ and all that money that Watari used to handle all of that, but, how about those logistics now, if they do plan on staying at HQ, and if they do plan on, keeping this on the down low that L has died, and maybe Light Yagami steps in, right, as L. I don't know. Let's see how that plays out. But yeah, in the end, he knew it. He was right all along. He knew from the beginning that Kira is Light Yagami. And that supernatural aspect, he just couldn't, he was up against it in that sense. He was just starting to learn about it. And even then, the books are like cooked, right? There's fake rules, there's cheat codes in there that are used essentially. So yeah, he knew, and he knew on his deathbed he was right. His last moment, he knew he was right about Light Yagami. But him being at peace in that moment, that's another reason I felt that, okay, there's got to be contingencies, that, he feels that, okay, this might be the end for me, but, the hunt for Kira is going to go on. That was another reason I felt that, yeah, there's going to be more opposing force coming in, right? That Kira is not going to be left unchecked. Essentially, he could not counter the supernatural because he had no idea of the supernatural. He was just starting to learn about it, and even then, yeah, he wasn't getting all the right facts. And even then, he, that 13-day rule, he figured that out. He figured that out as well. He knew something's up, and he wanted to test that out, right? And he was confident that if they test this out, they'll crack the case. He said that. He straight up said that. So he, at the end, even though he was so up against it, against this lie and a fake rule even, he figured out that something's off here. This is the only stumbling block. Everything else is adding up, right? Everything is fitting in the right, every piece of the puzzle is fitting, but this. And so yeah, it's a goodbye to L, one of my favorites of the story, one of my favorites of anime. And, I've seen One Piece and Shingeki and Death Note at this point. And yeah, he's one of my favorites easily. And, that goes beyond anime as well. I really like L. I really did like L. It's not just anime. I think he's just a fantastic character overall. But yeah, that's about it. That's the end of a chapter. Now I look towards these final 12 episodes. Let's see how it plays out. So if you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. if you're interested in early access or maybe even full length for this episode, consider checking out the Patreon page. Please remember, it's just an option for anyone who's interested in content beyond the scheduled content. And if you are interested, check out the link in the pinned comment or in the description. Links to my social media are in there as well. Yeah, that's about it. That's the end of a chapter. But the show must go on, right? The show goes on. So yeah. Let's see. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon. Until then, take it easy.